There you go, sir. Broadcasting house.
Radio 4. Now it's 9:05 and time for Desert Island Discs. As usual, the castaway is introduced by Roy Plumley.
To celebrate the 50th birthday of Desert Island Discs, Sue Lawley introduces the special 1982 Arena programme featuring the Desert Island's creator, the late Roy Plumley.
What I needed was an idea strong enough for a series of 6 programmes. I was just about to get into bed, and then I had the inspiration.
In the company of anniversary castaway John Major, Arena presents a celebration of Roy Plumley's Desert Island Discs, Monday at 9 on BBC Two.
Now on to Lady Victoria Leatham discovers more Heirs and Graces.
This is all that remains today of the original Palace of Hatfield. Quite a small portion, really. This was home to the young Princess Elizabeth after her mother, Anne Boleyn, had been executed by her father, King Henry VIII. It was a very curious existence for a child, almost more like a prisoner than as a favoured courtier. Indeed, it is reported that her father, the king, kept her so short of money that she didn't even have a decent dress to wear. She lived here, studying, hunting, enjoying the grounds of Hatfield. But she was still more or less a prisoner. One might have supposed that once her father died and her half-sister Mary ascended to the throne, that things would have improved. But this was not the case. Living as she was under the constant threat of imprisonment and implication in plots, real or imaginary, Princess Elizabeth must have been living entirely on her nerves. She must have been alert to every possible danger. So imagine how she felt that day when, seated under an oak tree in the park, she saw approaching a small group of courtiers. What sort of news were they bringing? What message were they going to give her? Was she going to end up in the Tower of London? On this occasion, not so. On this occasion, they were coming to tell her that her half-sister, Queen Mary, was dead, and that she was now the Queen of England. She packed up and went back with them to London, having first of all held her first council here in the old palace. After that, it was the end of an era and the end of her association with Hatfield. Although Elizabeth rarely visited Hatfield once she became queen, there's plenty of evidence of her early days living there. There's the famous rainbow portrait attributed to Isaac Oliver. The coat with its eyes and ears, which suggested that the queen saw and heard everything that was happening in her country. And the more personal touches, like her kid leather gloves. And a pair of her stockings, silk ones. They're said to be the first silk stockings ever worn in England. The old palace wasn't in favour anymore when King James I came to the throne. So little did he care for it that he arranged for what must have been the first ever house swap, and exchanged it for the home of his chief minister, Robert Cecil, the first Lord Salisbury, who lived at Tibbalds near Enfield. And this is the document that signed away Hatfield as a royal residence forever. The first Lord Salisbury's great passion was building, and when he decided to build himself a house here at Hatfield, he didn't mess about. He knocked down the 3 walls of the old palace of Hatfield, and he created this marvellous Jacobean mansion standing behind me. It was in fact built in the shape of an E to commemorate Queen Elizabeth. And when it was made, it cost £10,000. By the time all the furnishings were completely put inside, the whole house was done up and ready to receive visitors. It was a house that was capable of entertaining the highest in the land, even to royalty. Hatfield took 5 years to build, and throughout the building of it, Lord Salisbury supervised it personally. One can imagine him being here almost every day to keep an eye on the workmen. Tragically, before he was able to live in it, fate took a hand and he died. He was never able to entertain anyone here, let alone royalty. Here I am on the grand staircase at Hatfield, and as you can see, it's very grand indeed. Beautifully carved newel posts with cherubs and coats of arms and goodness knows what else. But as well as the grandeur and the family feeling about it, it has a very good technical advantage over most staircases. Let me show you. This was a sporting family. Hatfield is set in a large country estate where people shot and hunted and rode and hawked and did all the other things that Tudor and Jacobean gentlemen and ladies did. And in order to keep out their large dogs from soiling the upstairs carpets with muddy paws, they had this very good invention of a pair of dog gates put on their staircase. Such a simple idea, and especially as it's set just a few steps up from the bottom, so that even the largest hound couldn't spring from the floor and clear them in order to go upstairs and do a lot of damage. Talking about upstairs, the great rooms are upstairs, full of treasures, full of wonderful pictures and furniture and porcelain. Let's go upstairs and have a look. Lord Salisbury took a very personal interest in the interior decoration of Hatfield, as well as in the outside. He must have spent a great deal of the £38,000 that it cost to build this house in decorating this room we're in now. This is known as the King James drawing room, and it's not difficult to see why. Because above the fireplace is this extraordinary bronze full-length statue of the king. Can you imagine Lord Salisbury's feelings on being repaid for all his hard work and his loyal service to his monarch? On being given something like this? What do you do with it? Where do you put it? I think probably he chose the best route and put his king on the mantelpiece. Amongst the many portraits hung round the walls of this room, of this brilliant and politically orientated family, perhaps one of the most charming is of the first Marchioness of Salisbury, painted here by Sir Joshua Reynolds with her little spaniel in the garden. She was an extraordinary woman, even by today's standards. Almost blind and aged nearly 80 years old, she was taken hunting by her groom, strapped to her horse. When they came to a jump, he would shout to her, "Damn you, my lady, jump!" And presumably all three of them made it safely over the obstacle. Her gambling parties were numerous, And it is said that they went on until dawn and that the floor of the long gallery was carpeted ankle deep in discarded cards. Here we are in the long gallery. Whichever way you look at it, this is a vital part of the house because it joins the two wings, one to the other. It's an enormous room. It's 180 feet long. It has 4 fireplaces. And this room today is used by the family. They sit in here in the winter when the house is closed to the public. In days past, it would have been used for that very good purpose, considering the weather outside, for taking exercise. When the weather was bad, the Victorian ladies of the family would have walked up and down, passing the time of day reading and discussing matters of politics, perhaps. Hatfield was one of the first houses in the 19th century to be wired for electricity. Of necessity, it was a fairly basic installation. And in fact, the bare wires would run along the top of the panelling in this long gallery and frequently burst into flames. And the family became most adept at grabbing a cushion and lobbing it up to put out the conflagration. The problems with Hatfield's electricity, however, didn't stop in the 19th century. Only 2 years ago, everything packed up at Christmas. The house was plunged into darkness. And the family, using their initiative, sent out for candles. There wasn't a candle left in a shop within miles of this great house. And casting light on the treasures and mysteries of Hatfield is John Bly. Well, John, here we are back again together, and we're going to look at some furniture for us today.
Well, that's right. You were mentioning fires just now.
That's right.
I've got another reason why there were so many fires. The extraordinary length they went to keep the food hot. Here we are in the winter dining room.
That's right.
Miles from the kitchen. So what do they keep the plates warm? They had portable ovens.
Oh, look at that. Isn't that wonderful? Look.
An absolute fire hazard, you see. And of course, you kept the hot coals or bricks in the base, and you had a place here for hot plates. The servants were dispensed with during the mealtime, so of course you not only had that, you also had another one. The other pair, or the one of the pair, was for ice drinks, and in the top was liquid. There's something else I want to show you, which is something of a mystery here. There's a wonderful set of chairs, and we've got on the back a little painted oval, which tells us that these were actually given to the family by the LeBlanc family, right? Now then, these are not English chairs. They look like sort of George II period. Their construction isn't English. Their shape isn't really purely English. And the decoration is Chinese. The date is 1819, but the chairs would have to be 50 years before that.
Yeah.
Now, what's a family in the middle of England doing with Chinese chairs? We don't know anything about the LeBlancs at the moment. Now, I mean, were they East India Company people? What was the story behind that? And that's the sort of little mystery which the archivist hopefully is going to turn up something on, but fascinating, wonderful. Now, there's something else I want to show you. Well, you know, today we're very concerned about furnishing all in one period. In fact, if you look at any of these great houses, they've always got a mixture of things which give the place the character. For example, we've got urns from the 1780s, we've got Chinese chairs all in one room. Here, we've got a marble table from Italy. This is wonderful.
This is incredible. I was looking at this earlier.
Yeah. Now, this is pietra dura, an ancient craft, as you know, but done so beautifully. Now, all these are different marbles, using the shading in the marble to create the reality of the figures. And, of course, fairly easy to date, even without any knowledge of the subject itself, from the costume. And this would be, what, 1790, I suppose?
Something like that, yeah.
Some 30 years, or 20 years before the base was made. First, let's have a look at all these different types of marbles. Imagine not only the brickwork, but the sky, the choice of marble for that. And then, of course, these wonderful vines and tendrils that come down. And look, a little hole to show the sky coming through. Now, that is purely the use of the right marble. Now, the pair of these are absolutely marvellous examples of course, the Grand Tour, which went on throughout
and the Medici
18th
family
century.
used to have these made for them as well, didn't they?
Yes,
They were great
yes.
patrons.
And so, in the same room as all this elegance, look what we've got here as a contrast. And it sits quite happily, one enormous plank of elm. So over 20 feet long, and the top is actually over 450 years old. This table was actually in the old palace, and it was brought over here and put into the servants' hall, where the story goes, of course, that the food was prepared, they sat and ate, the servants ate their meals, but the prettiest story of all is, I think, that every new maid, every new servant maid that came to the house, she had to dance on this table in front of all the assembled staff before she got her first supper.
Oh,
Isn't that lovely?
Imagine the embarrassment.
Absolutely. But they've all carved their names on the top, you see. And I'm rather pleased to say that J.B. was here, Nothing to do with me, actually.
Oh, was it?
No,
Did you bring your penknife by any chance?
no, I didn't.
A secret door opening out of the wall, and behind that, a secret staircase that goes down to the ground floor. As well as being a grand house for entertaining royalty, this house had a secret life as well. Walls that open out of panelling. There's another one on the other side. They closed together to form a completely secret room here, in which people could come and go without being seen even by the servants. This was essential for the time at which the house was built. Robert Salisbury was a very secret man. He was privy to all the goings-on at court, all the plots, all the negotiations with foreign powers. And to this end, he had built into the wall a most ingenious device. If I just push on this panel here, it slides down, revealing two little windows which give onto the great banqueting hall. Perhaps imagine a messenger arrives from the king late at night. There's a banquet going on in the hall downstairs. He wishes to attract Robert Salisbury's attention, to bring him important documents. So what does he do? He waves at him through the window, just to let him know that he's here. Nobody else would even see the secret sign. And then the negotiations could begin. The 19th century organ in the armoury still works and is given an airing by Tom Collins, the local church organist. In the Great Fire at Hatfield 150 years ago, in which the first Marchioness lost her life, the chapel was saved simply because the flames melted the lead tanks in the roof, releasing gallons of water. The families still use the chapel today. Tradition sets the male members on the right of the aisle and the women on the left. Modern embroidered kneelers now soften the discomfort of family prayers. And they were made in a room just above the chapel by the grand old lady of Hatfield's conservation staff, Evelyn Brule.
When the coronation came, they brought out a kit here, and I got that, and I started, and that was the first sort of thing I did in this way. And from then on, I've never stopped, really. I usually do my own designs now. I don't really like to work from a kit, but I have actually done the kit for Hatfield, which is sold in the shop now. But I tried. I can do that for hours.
At the age of 86, Evelyn has good enough eyesight and a steady enough hand to be a useful member of a small conservation team, said to represent the cream of needlewomen from the 5 counties around Hatfield. They're all volunteers who, for the past 11 years, have been saving Hatfield's furnishings and fabrics from decay. It was Lady Salisbury's idea to set up the team.
They work on the conservation of the silks and the upholstery. We have an upholstery team as well. And the embroideries in the house, the tapestries, chiefly, of course, perhaps the tapestries.
Yes, your lovely set of Sheldon tapestries which are being done now.
Yes, that's very exciting. We have the first one back on the wall, the next one is very nearly there, and the third one won't be all that long, I think, and we've got the 4th one to start on. It's still hanging there, it hasn't been started yet. And so much is due to our absolutely wonderful team of workers, volunteer workers. Everything really is due to them, led by Mrs. Kendall, who's our head conservation lady.
And perhaps the conservation team's greatest achievement to date has been the total restoration of the state bed and bedroom. It's still in use in a private part of the house.
And this was a major project.
Yeah,
because
I can imagine. The whole of... wonderful. Look at the colour of it. It just glows, doesn't it? Yes. And tell me all about it. What happened? It was in a very distressed state, was it?
Yes, it was. It had been here since 1710, and the damask had been decayed by the light. The bed cover had disappeared completely. The cloth of gold on the headcloth had been worn off by people actually sitting up, leaning against it. Mm-hmm. And Lady Salisbury decided, really, we must tackle the whole bed and make it fit for the best bedroom in the house again.
So how long did it take?
It took about 2 years, mm-hmm. because we had problems with the ceiling. New ceiling had to be put in.
A new ceiling had
yes.
to be put in? Because the tester is attached to the ceiling?
Yes, because the tester was actually hanging from a 14-inch square beam, which had a crack in it. It was bowed, yeah. And unsafe.
The ceiling had sunk, in fact, 8 inches. And so we went up and got to work in the ceiling to discover all the horrors there. And there were a great many. It meant what was starting as a comparatively small job. The interior decoration of the room, paintwork and so on, turned into a major job, a constructional job. We had to renew the beam and the whole of the ceiling had to be reconstructed.
Well, it really is a bed fit for a royal person, isn't it? Who slept in this bed? Has anybody famous slept in this bed?
Well, we were very, very honoured. The first person, after 2 years' work, to sleep in the bed was Her Majesty.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? Oh, congratulations. I think that's a great triumph, isn't it, at the end of a lot of hard work?
Yes, it is. It was very lovely.
At Hatfield, nothing is wasted or thrown away. Conservation goes on in the most unlikely places. I mean, where we're doing all this seems to be what I would call the nursery bathroom, is that right?
I think it's quite possible. What's happened, the bath has been raised up so that we can now work on this wash table into the bath, and it's working very well. It's on the dais and without breaking our backs. Yeah. It's so satisfying seeing the dirt running out, and the dirt that was in the bath. You really know you are getting it clean. This valance was found down in the basement, behind some lumber, actually. I don't know how long it had been down there, but it's, we think, from the library, from part of the curtains, the valance at the top. And it's in a pretty desperate state, so we're just washing it very carefully. And we'll put it out to dry, and any bits that are good we'll be able to use for patching the curtains.
I'm sure the First Lord Salisbury never thought his house would be used for this. With space inside at a premium, where better than up on Hatfield's high lead roof for drying the newly washed curtains? Make do and mend is the motto, as the ravages of time and neglect are reversed, and fragments carefully pieced together, a set of usable curtains appear, which will last well into the next century. At £5 a pound, old horsehair is much too precious to throw out. After washing, it's as good as new. Juliet Chodzko is refurbishing a 200-year-old library chair.
Yes, well, fortunately with this particular chair, although it looks as if it's quite big, because of the back struts, the back has been done in 3 pieces.
Oh, so you've got a join under here?
Yes. And the same with even the front piece. There will be joins with piping in the middle along the line of this.
Mm-hmm.
So
doesn't
that's
that look
all
good? It's a wonderful colour, isn't it?
Yes,
How difficult is it to get hold of really good quality skins?
It was very difficult to get the right quality that Lady Salisbury had in mind. I think it took about 8 years of various abortive attempts before she found not only the exact colour that she wanted, but also the quality of the graining of the leather.
Mm-hmm. And they came from Nigeria or somewhere, did they?
They came from Nigeria, they're goat. They were tanned in Nigeria and then they went to Italy for dyeing. I think the firm also does work for Gucci.
Good heavens. Ultimate in a status symbol, isn't it? Sort of a Gucci chair for the library. It's wonderful. Although Hatfield has always been famous as a house, it now has an internationally well-known garden, and this is due to the present Lady Salisbury. She started planting and rejuvenating the garden when she first came here. She was inheriting something which was very Victorian, very overgrown and very cluttered. She swept all that away, and now we're standing in her Italian garden. It makes a perfect backdrop to this lovely house. Of course, she was dealing with history because John Tredescant, the historically well-known gardener, was employed by Lord Robert Cecil when he built Hatfield. He was sent to Europe to scour for bushes and shrubs and plants to bring back to make Hatfield's garden wonderful. She's been hunting through some of the old records. She's come up with some amazing discoveries.
I did have some wonderful treasure hunts for plants that I knew were being grown here by Tredescant. One example was the double anemone, the velvet anemone, which was a great florist flower. And it was first grown in the gardens here at Hatfield. And it was very much featured in embroideries and pictures of the day, and was a very popular plant. It disappeared pretty well, I think, all over Europe. And a friend of mine said that he knew of the plant that you crossed with an anemone coronarius, which was a special anemone which grew in one place in the south of France. And he found it for me, and I've got it.
Oh.
Which is great excitement here now, and I'm hoping to cross it with an anemone coronarius and once again to breed the velvet anemone.
Finally, on the outside of the house, one can't help but notice you're doing a lot of restoration to the stonework.
Yes, we are, and that really has been going on for many years, really ever since the war. My father-in-law was very far-seeing, and he had all the stonework, which was beginning to decay quite badly about 25 years ago, photographed in detail. And so we know exactly, now that so much has completely vanished, exactly what the carving was and how it was done. And so now the firm of Ratty and Cater are recarving the whole of the south front. And we're now beginning to put it up. The whole of the front porch has already been done. That was put up last year. And we're doing on the right and the left-hand side of the porch now. I think it's so encouraging and exciting to know that still there are craftsmen who can do such superb work. I mean, every bit as good as done in the 17th century.
In this house of many secrets, the best has yet to be revealed. Just look at this. This is perhaps the greatest treasure on show anywhere. This little set of rock crystal, of pearls, enamel, you name it, it's all here. And it was the gift of the Spanish ambassador to Mary and Philip of Spain. This was made in Italy. It's been ascribed to a man called Cellini, who is perhaps the greatest goldsmith ever known. The engraved rock crystal could well be the work of another great master, someone called Miseroni, who was working out of Milan during the Renaissance. But whoever it was made by, whoever fashioned these delicate and wonderful objects, knew exactly what they were doing. And I can't imagine a better resting place for them than a great house like Hatfield.
A manor house on Bodmin Moor is where Michael Newman visits at 8:30 on Monday morning to examine antiques at home.
In 40 minutes, a mother behind bars and her teenage daughter struggle to resolve their conflicting emotional needs as they face a 12-year separation.
The girl I left behind was, you know, somebody else. And this is what happened in 15 months of my not being with her.
How can she criticise my home when her home's in prison?
I need some love. That's what, when I'm like this, that's what I do.
Charlotte and Abby, Tuesday, 9:50 on 2.
The epic adventure Mahabharat continues in half an hour. First on 2, Sharma Pereira concludes the present series of Network East.